Hey guys, I'm Chris,
And I'm Mike.
and welcome back to this week's No Limits, the Scott Harvath podcast. What's new this week, Mike?
Chris, it's not about what's new with me. April 6th was a very, very special day, not just because of Vince Flynn Day. Chris, I think you have some news for the listeners.
I do. Sorry I've been MIA, although you guys probably haven't noticed because we've been dropping content, but yeah, I welcomed in another daughter. I got 3 daughters now.
Woo-wee.
She decided to come out on April 6th, Vince Flynn's birthday. It was great. You know, I was trying to get her to name, like Vinia or trying to work in, but we ended up with Lillian. So.
Flynn could have worked, kinda.
Yeah, could have put it as a middle name maybe. Or I was like, what about Mitchell? The night before we didn't know if it was a boy or girl. I was like, what do you think about Mitchell if it's a boy? Caroline was like, no way.
No, you
But
didn't say it. You asked her?
Yeah, in the hospital, because we didn't know if it was a boy or girl, right? And I was like, tomorrow's Vince Flynn Day.
No, you didn't. She's in the
maybe
hospital and you brought up Vince Flynn Day?
I did. We were just talking.
I'd get my ass beat.
No, this is the 4th time around, so we had
Right.
we had it down pat. It's funny. When we had Patrick, right? We had so much help just poured at us. Like my parents, her parents. I mean, I'm not saying that we don't have help now, but like just a lot of help. People making us meals, people sending us stuff, whatever.
Now you're pros.
Now it's like 4th kid.
You'll be all right.
There you go. They came down for a day, then they left. Like,
Yeah.
You're good. Probably I need more help now than I did with Patrick, but
I mean, at this point, though, for you guys, it's the same as going to the supermarket. You got your routine, you check out, you pay your bills, and life continues.
Yeah, just adding in the small one is not the hardest. It's like now dealing with probably the was the youngest one, but my 1 and couple month old. She is still in like the phase of she wants to be picked up, and she's very jealous of the new baby. So
yeah.
The older ones just love her, so it's good. But yeah, no, I'm back. I'm ready to pod. It's been great.
Well, guys, you'll have to wait 9 more months before Chris has another announcement for you.
No, not happening. Not happening.
I know you want or Patrick wants a brother. I know it.
Yeah, I know. Everyone was telling Caroline it was a boy. There's all these like, I don't know, wives' tales or
right.
Whatever to like sort of predict and like whether or not you're carrying low, whether or not you look pointy. She had very similar, like cravings to Patrick versus like the 2 girls were different. Her morning sickness was more like Patrick than it was like the other 2. So we were all like, oh, this has to be a boy.
Right. You're reading the tea leaves.
Yeah, and then literally like 2 days before, I was like, what if it's a girl? We should probably have a girl. We had like all these boy names picked out and like only like 2 girl names. It was, yeah, but no, I'm here.
You're
I'm
here.
good to go.
If Adeline was the rap baby, welcome Lillian. Now we've got the Harvath baby.
The Harvath baby. There you go.
She is here. Well, guys, we're not just going to talk about Chris's massive family for the whole episode. So let me tell you a little bit about what we're getting into. We've got 3 topics we want to cover today. We finished Lions of Lucerne, and in May, we'll be coming at you with Book 2 of Scott Harvath, Path of the Assassin. Really enjoying that one right now. So in the meantime, we want to bring up 3 topics today. First, we are excited to keep our author series going. We have a couple of interviews lined up, but we are expanding our brand. So we are going to launch and post a new feed, No Limits, the Thriller Podcast. We'll tell you more about that. We're going to have some book club style discussions. We're going to cover new releases in both thrillers, but also TV and film about thrillers. And of course, we're going to bring you some author interviews and keep that going there. So we'll talk about that. We also want to jump into Rising Tiger because we have an update on that and an excerpt. And if you didn't check it out, Chris and I are going to dig into the Rising Tiger excerpt, which will be the next book by Brad Thor, coming out July 5th. They moved the
Yeah,
date.
it's coming out a week earlier now.
Yes.
Week earlier.
I like that. Watch some fireworks, drink some beer, have a barbecue, and pick up the book the next day. And then lastly, we want to wrap up with a little clarification on the ThrillerPod scorecard. Last week, we used our new scorecard rating system for the first time ever, so we want to dig into that a little bit, give you some more information about how we plan to use that going forward.
Cool. Yeah, so just kick it off, this No Limits, the Thriller podcast. I guess this is something that we probably should have done in season 1, because we had a lot of these author series. But we're learning, we're growing as a podcast. We realize that we're sort of now at this divergent point. We've split off Mitch Rapp in its own season. We're now going into season 2, focused on Brad Thor and Scott Harvath. But we want to sort of leave that feed, as it is, with just stuff related to Brad Thor. And we thought that the best way, but we obviously, Mike was able to do while I was, sort of busy the past couple of weeks. He was able to crank out these 2 amazing interviews with 2 people we've had on the pod before, Andrews and Wilson and Ward Larson, who have had books. By the time you hear this, both of their new books will have come out. And these are great podcasts. You're going to want to listen to them, and you're going to want to read those books. But, we felt that it would be best to have, just its own feed, and people can go and find those. Yeah, and we want to keep those all this years going. That's something we like. And what Mike was able to do with these podcasts is half of them are sort of spoiler free, and then the other half, they're actually able to talk to us about the book and get into spoiler content, which is great. And I feel like that's something that we have been able to do with some of our discussions that you don't really find with other, book tour, generic book tour interviews. Like the last interview we had with Kyle, I felt like that was one of our best interviews because, it was like a couple weeks after Enemy of the Gates came out. The whole pod was just about, we were able to talk Mike Nash. Well, he wouldn't be able to talk that much Mike Nash,
right?
If we interviewed him, 3 weeks before the book came
Exactly.
out. I mean, obviously we would have known it because we obviously read the arc, but we couldn't have asked him that question.
No.
The first question we asked him was, why did you kill Mike Nash? And I feel like those are better conversations and something that our listeners, or at least me and Mike, feel like you guys want more of and deserve more of.
And you're going to hear exactly that, particularly with Andrews and Wilson and their new release, which is just incredible. The Dark Angel in the Shepherd series, they were chomping at the bit, just wanting to dig in to the nitty gritty and the details and the choices they made in that book. And once we said spoiler warning, they let loose. Like the conversation just got so deep and interesting. Because everything else we were talking about to that point, I've heard them say. They've said it
exactly
on YouTube. They've said it on everything that's posted. And you know what? It built hype for the book, and that's wonderful. But people still want to digest the book even after the fact. Not just leading up to pub day, but once they read it, we want to fill that space of saying, come to No Limits, come to the Thriller podcast. Sometimes it will be just Chris and I breaking down the book like we've been doing in season 1 and 2. Sometimes we'll bring the author on, when we're fortunate enough to do that. So imagine discussing a new release 2-3 weeks or so after it comes out and getting to hear from the author about the choices they made. And another opportunity on this feed that we'll get to do, the new feed, is to have some book clubs. Let's say we can't get an author, or let's say, Chris, only one of us has read the book. We can bring on some other guests, some other guest reviewers, people we've had on the pod before, and just get different insights. So I'm really looking forward to that too. If you or I particularly read a book, really like it, boom, we could just invite some new voices on and have a book club about it. So I think by making a third feed, we can keep going with Scott Harvath here in season 2. But man, the Thrillerverse is just expanding. We can do so much more by having No Limits, the Thriller podcast, as its own feed.
Yeah, not only that, just this summer, we are going to be getting we already had our first series, our treat with, which if you guys haven't checked it out, Lee Child's
Reacher.
The Reacher series, but we're now venturing into what I hope is a better beginning than what we've had in the past of these thriller related TV and movie series. We have The Terminalist, based on Jack Carr novels, and The Gray Man movie coming out on Netflix in July. We want to have a place, and we just felt that putting those episodes here just didn't make sense.
Right.
So. But we want to have a place to talk about that. Obviously, we feel like you guys are going to want to watch those. We're going to want to, discuss them. So yeah, and then obviously leading up to those, it gives us an opportunity to talk about The Terminalist. Like,
right.
We haven't read the book.
Exactly.
Or I have read the book, but we haven't talked,
we haven't done an episode
on. Right. I haven't read any Gray Man stuff. So I really want to read some of those as well.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Let me give you guys the rundown. We have a little bit of an outline and a schedule for, again, and you can go subscribe starting right now to No Limits, the Thriller podcast. And we're going to have, like I said, just in the next week or so, Andrews and Wilson on to talk about their Shepherd series, Dark Intercept and Dark Angel. Ward Larson to discuss Assassin's Dawn and Assassin's Edge. Then, moving into May, we're going to get Chris Howdy's Storm Rising on May 3rd. So at some point, the month of May, we'll discuss that. And he's a good friend of the pod, so hopefully have Chris back on. And then June is all about Jack Carr, because July 1st is the TV show release. So in June, we want to cover both The Terminalist and his new release coming out May 17th, In the Blood. Then, obviously, when July 1st hits, we'll cover The Terminalist TV series. And then July is all Mark Rainey. We're definitely going to cover The Gray Man, the first book in the series. Maybe we'll cover the newest release that came out earlier this year, Sierra 6. And of course, July 22nd, when the movie hits, we'll be back at you with some Gray Man content about the film as well.
Yeah, no, really excited about this. And all while we're doing that, once a month or twice a month, we're going to be giving you Brad Thor books.
Yes.
And factor then we're going to have a very busy July, Mike, because we also have to do the lead up to Rising Tiger and the drop of Rising Tiger, and hopefully get Brad on the pod to talk about it. So
right, we're going to aim for July around the release of Rising Tiger, and again, we'd hope we can have a conversation with him about the spoilers, which we will not post until later in July after you guys get your hands on a copy. I think it's a smart move. That way this feed can be just covering the Scott Harvath books. And so what that means is, for our longtime listeners, you can expect a little less of the bonus content like we did with Mitch Rapp. We realized after the Mitch Rapp series, we really loved the bonus content and the interviews. Some of that kind of stuff will move to the Thriller podcast, new feed. That way we can keep, season 1 Mitch Rapp, season 2 Scott Harvath, very streamlined. And then the Thriller podcast feed, all about thrillers.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Not less content, just distributed differently. Just think of it that way. So speaking of Rising Tiger, I didn't catch this. I had seen the email. Obviously, I get the Brad Thor newsletter, and I saw that they pushed up. Interesting why they pushed up the release date a week. They must have seen some book might be coming out that what's a big heavy hitter on the, because it's all strategery with the New York Times bestseller list.
I also think July 4th. People are going to be chilling.
True. I don't know if Malcolm Gladwell has a book originally coming out a week after July 5th, or
Ken Follett.
What was that? Who does that Apple book? She did like Big Little Lies. But yeah, she was the one who had the number one the week that Kyle's book came out.
I'll tell you what, as long as we don't get a repeat of that Crawdad business, I'm sorry. I'm sure it's a great book, whoever author, but that Crawdad thing was stealing the spotlight from so many other books that totally deserve that top spot as well.
But I had missed in the newsletter that not only did they move the release of a week, but they put out a little excerpt. So we were able to get the first 2 chapters. What did you think, Mike?
Oh.
I thought it was amazing.
we've been talking China. For anyone who remembers season
Right.
1, we mentioned a lot that China's got to come up in thrillers. It's just too important to the geopolitical landscape and, the international chessboard. Yet there was a hesitancy. We didn't see it in all the main thrillers. I'm sure many thrillers covered, Chinese influence.
Sure.
But these main big series that were coming out, we kind of shied away from it. And I don't know why.
I know there is one, we're obviously going to get to it, but there is one book where Brad, I don't know if it's, I just remember it. There's like this scene in China with like this giant warehouse where they're doing, essentially, I imagine like a Russian bot farm, but they're doing like other things. Do you remember that? Does that sound familiar to you?
Like I said, I didn't read all of them, and I don't, that one.
Oh, yeah, you said that.
Yeah, that one I don't think I know.
No, but you're right. Like it hasn't been a player in either of our universes that we've covered so far.
Yeah. And even with that, some of the cyber stuff, have you seen something about Taiwan, South China Sea, Kashmir?
No, we haven't.
I haven't seen those, or even the Uyghurs. Like, there's so much that could be going on that I just haven't seen. Global trade wars.
Or Hong Kong.
Hong Kong, Macau. Like, yeah, and it's time. And so, spoiler warning here, it's only, an 11-page excerpt, I want to say, chapters 1 and 2.
1 and 2, yeah.
So if you haven't read that, head on over to bradthor.com. You'll see it right there on the Rising Tiger advertisement. Click here to read an excerpt. You will be glad you did.
It says Black Ice, but I don't know why it said Black Ice, but if you click on it, it actually goes to Rising Tiger.
Oh, did it? I didn't catch that mistake. But dude, it's unreal. I think it's so good. Let's read the little blurb. So there's a blurb about the book, and then that will help us transition into the excerpt. So we're going to read the blurb, which is on the website, and then talk about this extraordinary opening. I have a hot take about it, but I'll wait to give it to you. Chris, you want to hook us up? Maybe we'll go back and forth reading these different paragraphs from the blurb.
Sure. An unprecedented, potentially nation-ending threat has materialized on the world stage. Though the United States has long been aware of this growing risk, the administration after administration has passed the buck, fearful of global consequences of engaging this enemy head-on. The clock, however, has now run out, and doing nothing is no longer an option. With the stakes higher than they have ever been, it's time to unleash Scott Harvath.
As America's top spy, Harvath has the unparalleled skills and experience necessary to handle any situation. But this assignment feels different and appears to be doomed from the start.
Thrust into a completely unfamiliar culture, with few he can trust, the attempts on his life begin piling up the moment he arrives. Someone, somewhere knows far too much.
With democracy itself hanging in the balance, Harvath will risk everything to untangle the explosive plot and bring every last bad actor to justice.
To justice.
And we get those bad actors right in chapter 1.
Away.
Final spoiler. Dude, these Chinese soldiers crossing the border in the Himalayas, in the Kashmir region, with these spiked clubs. What were these, like maces from the Middle Ages they were just beating down the Indian snow warriors with? That was vicious.
Right off, we've only so far been able to talk and deep dive into one Brad Thor book, but we mentioned on the pod the two things that Brad does best, and two things that I feel like differentiates him uniquely from just we can relate, but to Vince Flynn or Kyle. Geopolitics, as well as descriptions of geography.
Yeah, exactly.
And we get that so much in these first two chapters. So the
just
first
a few
chapter,
pages.
right?
In just a few pages.
Just a few pages. It is so quintessential Brad Thor, and it's amazing. So right, Mike says, boom, right off the bat, Chinese coming over Pakistan. We meet this sinewy, muscly commander of these snow warriors who took out, like, what did he say? He took out like 6 or so.
No, he killed 11
of the
dudes.
Chinese, 11 by himself with a machete and a machete from the Spec Ops, and then a Delta Force knife.
Dude, this Indian major has trained with the SEALs, the cold weather SEALs. He's trained with the best of the best for cold weather, and he's back trying to defend India's border. The dude carries a tomahawk with a Navy SEAL logo on it, this Indian general, and a Delta knife. And he killed
That
11
was sick.
of these Chinese dudes. Here's another thing. I've read a lot about it. Nat Geo, maybe a year or two ago, one of their installments was entirely dedicated to this region, the Jammu, Kashmir, Ladakh conflict on the border.
The border, like the whole contested area.
Exactly. Right? And it's so convoluted, and how the lines have been drawn, various treaties, some accepted, some controversial. The lines and the geography of mountain peaks and a few meters this way has been so extraordinarily complex. And then they also mentioned a lot of the attacks are not about getting kills. So when these Chinese soldiers actually came with the clubs, it made sense to me, because the article said, although there's an occasional mortar round accidentally goes off, that's not what it's about. It's about actually showing the other side you might be willing to move troops, to physically, cross that line, to walk across the line with a weapon. It's not about how many kills you can get from your side firing onto the other, So these guys are trained in like hand-to-hand mountain combat. So when it was all like maces and clubs and tomahawks, I was digging it, because that's what it's about. It's pride, it's holding your ground on this line, and China is losing a lot of steam in some cases, and they see opportunities that have not been taken for a few decades now. Where's the tipping point where you need to exercise your national willpower, build that nationalism, and say, our land, we're taking it. It's not about launching rockets over it. It's about physically moving people into it.
Yeah, it's about, sort of poking and seeing how far they could go.
Exactly.
And prodding. And we even get this description of this special weapon that like was detonated and it caused like the boiling of the water underneath, like on the soldier's skin, that it hurt so much that they had to pull back. And again, Brad gives this whole description about how the rise of nationalism in China, and how they're being pinned down by being seen as weak and having to. I was almost going to say, like, is he going to reference like the no COVID policy and like this turmoil that they're inflicting on their people
in Shanghai now? There's a major outbreak.
25 million people in lockdown.
It's insane.
And this idea of they're having to sort of flex their power because one false move can lead to. He even says they're one Tiananmen Square from revolution.
Exactly.
Just painting that picture, setting it up perfectly, describing real world, like actual real world consequences put into this book, just great.
Exactly what you're saying. Listen to this quote, which comes right after Brad was discussing how the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, is being perceived as weak and on the downturn in terms of political and social influence. And Brad writes, quote, "To prop up the party and prevent such a demise, Beijing needed to fog the minds of its people, to convince them that they were locked in an existential struggle, that the world was out to destroy China. China was feeling weak, and that weakness made them dangerous. Anything and everything was on the table, including the most contemptible and horrific acts of aggression." That's what I want to see, dude. So much about just these two chapters got me, oh my God, like, we've been asking for China, and Brad, the geopolitical master, is not just giving us China. He is like totally just wiping the floor with language like that.
Yeah, no, it's giving us all we wanted and more. Like I read those two chapters. I had no idea what this book was about. As soon as I read those two chapters, I texted you, "Wow,
yep,
I want this book now." Like I haven't felt that about a book in a long time.
Right. A non-Mitch Rapp book. I felt it about the Mitch Rapp books, but
no, I felt it about Anime Gates. I'm not gonna lie. I wanted that when I read that Excerpt. But like some other ones, I'm like, oh, maybe it's because I'm not that invested. Could be, but I know that this. I have a really good feeling this is going to be an amazing book.
Yep.
So we get that whole first chapter, China coming over. We meet this major. I'm assuming he's probably going to be a decent player in the book. I hope so, at least.
Well, we thought that in chapter 2, but then ending of that.
I was going to say that. We then meet another new character in chapter 2, this Ritter character, longtime spy, working undercover. Great description of his life and, how he, set everything up, and now he gets pulled back into this one last job. I love the descriptions of India and traveling around and everything he's eating, he's buying, everything he's seeing.
Yep.
I think this is going to be our character. That besides Brad, like we're going to be with him.
That's what I thought. Besides Scott, yeah.
But yeah, I keep saying Brad. Besides Scott, and then boom, the last sentence, an assassin pulls up behind him and pulls the trigger. Who's the assassin? Is it Scott?
I don't know.
Is it some other person?
No, it can't be Scott. It can't be.
No, it can't be Scott.
It's a good guy.
Because this guy's been sent there by the president, right? So
yeah, the president personally asked him to come back into the fold.
Retirement.
Yeah,
right.
Come back to espionage. America needs you. He must have been like a South and East Asia kind of expert. I assume he's so comfortable in India, he must have served there, which is going to be important because India's posturing, not necessarily against China, but India's posturing in the region, especially being up and coming, the world's largest democracy, nuclear arsenal, like really powerful state, economic power. Look at how the digital revolution and basically the internet has totally boosted India's economy. They're going to be a big player to contend with, which means China's got to feel the pressure. Look at Tibet, Kashmir, Jammu, all these regions on their southern border with India. Brad's not only got to nail China, he's got to nail India. And the way he does it with this Eli Ritter character, he's got it. It's in his wheelhouse. And then he dies. It was so. Would you say that was Flynn?
We don't know if he dies.
Okay,
he says he pulled the trigger.
True. A gun behind his ear, pulls the trigger. I think that's.
We assuming he dies.
It's kind of Flynnian. We got this whole backstory
just to kill him,
and then he's possibly killed right then and there.
Good, yeah, I would say that. It's great. It's this cliffhanger. It's like, what? No, I want to read more.
I was a little nervous. They gave us the first chapter, the first 2. I was wondering, like, is that going to give away too much?
Is the perfect amount. Give us everything while also giving us nothing.
It was such a tease.
It literally gave us nothing, but also again gave us everything.
Gave us so much. Oh my God! This Major Banu, the Indian dude, is Ritter dead? Okay, Banu and Ritter. 2 characters I did not know 15 minutes ago, or 15 minutes before this pod. Never heard of them, never knew about them. They're literally cemented in my mind.
They are. That is good character writing.
It's perfect character writing. In 10 pages, I'm in love with 2 characters and feel like I know them. That's wild. Absolutely wild. Oh.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Anything else on the excerpt here, or anything else you're looking forward to in Rising Tiger?
No, I wish I could get it now. We got to get on those arcs, man.
Yeah, I don't know if they're ready yet, but we are definitely gonna hit up David at Simon & Schuster for some of that. So he's hooked us up in the past.
Mystery Bus.
The Mystery Bus. If you're not following at Atria Mystery Bus, one of the best follows on Twitter. Is he on Instagram? I haven't seen him there. No, okay.
I don't think so.
Have you seen?
He might be.
Have you seen his Roomba series?
He has a Roomba
the
series?
Roomba battles. Oh, dude, I forget what he calls it. He puts 2 books, usually new releases, on his Roomba, and people could guess which one, or put in the comments which one they think will last longer. They're stood up, like 2 hardcovers, and then the Roomba goes, and it like knocks into walls, and you see it's a battle. Which book will fall first? Which one will stand up?
Oh, that's funny.
I mean, he needs like a bracket and everything. I think there's like one book that has like a really long record of winning all these little Roomba battles.
That's funny. I got to check those out.
Pandemic activities, like starting a podcast. All right, well, what do you say we wrap up here for tonight with a little further discussion on the ThrillerPod scorecard? We rolled this out last week with our Lions of Lucerne Part 2, at the end of every book we cover, we're going to use the scorecard to give a little more structure to how we rate the book and how we rank it. Now, Chris, I was thinking about it, and your 23, my 25 on Lions of Lucerne felt a little low, just to say a 24 out of 30 or so.
I saw someone on Facebook didn't like that we posted our ratings.
Yeah, but so here's the deal. I think that's a great score. Like we said from the very beginning, we don't want to be cheerleaders. So we're not just going to hit you over the head and say 30 out of 30, best book ever, best in the series. We actually want to give you a critical analysis. Obviously, both series, Mitch Rapp and Scott Harvath, we'd recommend them to anyone. We'd say read every single one of them, buy every single one of them, and get the audiobook. But at the same time, we're gonna nitpick, not for nitpick's sake, but so that we have a clearer picture of which books are a cut above in that top 5. Which ones are still great thrillers, but in this series, just on a bell curve of this series, which ones are towards the bottom. So how are you feeling about the scorecard?
Yeah, I thought, I was like, oh shoot, did I go too low? Are the aggregators going to get after me for giving it a 23? And I don't know, I was like, every single one of my scores, when I thought about it again, I was like, yeah, I would give that again,
You stand by it.
I stand by it, and I think a 23 or average of a 24 is going to be a good score. Is Lions Lucerne an amazing book? Yeah. Are there better ones out there? I think in the series, I think there are a couple that are going to be. I don't think any book is going to get a 30. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Would Memorial Day get a 30? That's the question.
Well, right. Because if we just say, oh, because it's my favorite, Memorial Day gets a 30, or you say, oh, Consent to Kill gets a 30, it's going to be perfect in every regard, I don't think we're adding anything interesting to the conversation. But for me to go, no, Memorial Day would get dinged on believability and buy-in. Not a big ding like don't pick it up, it's a bad book, but I'm taking a point or two because A Nuke in a Mountain, like creative, sure.
Right.
Gripping thriller, it's probably my favorite action scene in any thriller. But if I step back, I'm like, did I buy into it? I kind of could close that, or I could see other readers closing that and rolling their eyes. Let's say you're not into the series like we are, where you're caught up in it. I could see some people being like, this is too much.
Yeah, or like Consent to Kill. You mentioned that now that I look back on it, some of the plot it's lacking because like the first half of the book is just like Louis and what is it, Abel, like trying to figure out how they're going to pay each other and how they're going to take out Mitch Rapp. Like it drags on a little bit at times. The ending's very good. Obviously, the scene at the house, right, is amazing. But so I think like that's where like the action score like comes in versus like the entire plot
exactly
would get dinged there. So I think like even our two favorite books might be a 28, 27, and so like that's like 3 points off of a 20, 24,
right.
Even
our favorite.
All right, let's take our least favorite book from the series. What was it? Executive Power?
Pursuit of Honor for me. I think it was Executive Power for you. Yeah. Action. I'm going 0 or 1. Well, the ending scene, right? Like Pursuit of Honor has the Lincoln Memorial, so 1, 2 for action. The plot picks up at the end, so maybe because the final scene.
It's this like
it's driving
through Iowa. That's the whole book where they're in Iowa, right? Like that. Yeah.
1 or 2.
There was. The villains?
Villains, I'm going 3, 4, because you had the Kassim.
That's higher because, right.
The 2 brothers, right? They were interesting.
Yeah, and then the buy-in, this idea that, I guess, like that's more believable that these guys are on the run, and then the one would come back. But then, like the whole Saudi, remember they go to like that one guy's house in DC or in Alexandria, where it's like the covers. Whatever. And then, like, I don't know what I don't even know what I would give a free space on. I have that book. I've tried to get it out of not get it out of my mind, but just, I haven't thought about that book in a while, too.
The ending.
Yeah, probably, so that's like a free 5. Maybe we need to change the free space score, but.
The cover I really like, so let's say 4, 5, 4, 9, buy-in 10, 11, villains 12, 13, 14. So we're at like 15, 16. Like, we're in the upper teens. So by saying I feel like it's going to be, if you're in the teens, it's probably not great. But if you're 18, 19, it's pretty okay, pretty good. If you crack 20, now we're talking. This book is rocking and rolling. And if you go as high as we did, 24, 25, that's one of the greats. And then you hit 27, 28, you're talking Memorial Day, Consent to Kill.
Exactly. So I think it actually gives us a better way than just giving an A, B, C, D.
I agree.
Which I also think is better than giving just an A plus to everything. Because what's the point of that?
I stand by
all
that.
these books get A's by us. Obviously, we like these books. We love these series. We want you to read them. To be a little more critical.
Here's the deal: we're not going to cover the book unless we stand by you buying it, right? It should be great. It's worth it. You're going to enjoy it. It's worth your time.
You are probably not covering anything below a 15. To be honest with you.
Right, exactly. So the fact that we bring something to you that's an 18, it's no, it's readable. It's a good story. These areas it was lacking. And if we don't tell you the areas it was lacking in, and it bothers me when books come out and automatically the first reviewers go, best book in the series, you got to get it. And it's sure, and that's going to be true occasionally, but you hear it way too much. And so we don't want to be that. We don't want to just say, it's an A+, A++ every time, just to be on the hype train. We want to bring a critical analysis, not to say it's bad, don't read it, but to say it's so good that it deserves to be studied and thought about this way.
We're obviously buying the book no matter what.
Duh. So. A buy-in example just came to me. For example, Total Power. Do you remember the hooker scene? They dress up as some they kind of look like prostitutes. They knock on the door. It's in the final third when they're looking for them in the safe house.
Right.
And they want to distract
and they're actually
the guard.
female agents.
Yeah, and then they start making out on the stoop to distract the guards or something. I'm kind of just that's not buy-in in terms of I don't think it would happen. It's my buy-in to the story is just not there anymore. So
sure. Yeah, that can go both ways.
Right. I guess one other thing to clarify. Covers. I'm assuming most are going to have one that we really like, a few we don't like, and a few that are just meh. Are we putting our cover score based on the one we really like? Are we doing it as a whole, considering all the covers aggregately? What do you think there?
No, I think it has to be a totality of covers. Mm-hmm. Because we haven't seen, I feel like we can't accurately grade it. We get back into the whole problem we had last season with giving something a score before we had actually finished reading the next 5 books. We had reached something and this deserves this because based off of all we've read.
Mm-hmm.
I think the better thing to do would be to grade how well we think all of the covers are.
Yep.
Maybe we can exclude the international ones because those kind of get
those
crazy.
Get weird, yeah.
Obviously, it can only elevate it, but it can't ding it. I feel like that would be a good way to do it.
Yeah. And then plot is also going to involve pacing. If buy-in is the believability of the plot or how much you're bought into it, I think plot is where we're going to cover the pacing. If because a lot of times in season 1, we would love a half of a book. First half was awesome, second half wasn't. Or more likely, first half was slow, second half had all the action. I feel like that would go into the plot section because the plot was not paced out very well.
Yeah, or buy-in, I don't buy those little wristband things that he has in Total Power. Just because you brought up Total Power.
The heartbeat monitor things.
Yeah, the heartbeat monitor things.
So if there's tech, right? If there's tech that hits, that helps with the buy-in. Ward Larson, you guys are going to hear on the new feed, No Limits, the Thriller Book Club. Ward really does his research on some high-tech, 21st century weaponry. To me, that would boost the buy-in of the story. Just the fact that everything seemed legit. This is in the works. This is actually being developed, even being used. And he takes it to the next level. So little things like that can get you a boost.
Yeah.
And the free space. I do want to clarify the free space. I love the idea of we just find that thing that the book deserves a 5 out of 5 for.
Yeah, no, it's a free 5 points, but it might not. I guess if for some reason because I'm guessing we're going to use this scorecard when we do other books as well. There might be a book that sort of has low marks. We don't really find anything that we can do, but I guess the free space is a way to sort of prop up and find something that we did like about something,
right?
And highlight that. So,
like Enemy at the State, you bring Donatella back, and you do it well. Like Kyle wrote Donatella scenes possibly better than Vince. Boom, 5 out of 5 in the free space. Like that's cool. That's awesome.
You get a 5 for essentially creating the A-team, like Mitch's A-team.
Exactly, a team up,
or like Ocean's 11,
the Avengers.
Yeah.
So
the Avengers. There you go.
I'm gonna also foreshadow here to No Limits, the Thriller podcast, the new feed, because my other interview with Andrews and Wilson is about the Shepherd series, of which there are currently 2 books, one just released, Dark Intercept and Dark Angel. I might want to sit down and do the scorecard for those because I really, really like them. Nice. So when you guys hear that interview, I might have to work out the scorecard for those as well because, dude, you got to get into them. It's about spiritual warfare.
Oh, yeah, you were telling me about this.
Yeah, it's by a Christian publishing house, and
right.
I would say I'm not a cheerleader for Christian themes or religious themes being in a thriller just because, right? Some writers in that subgenre just throw in, he started praying to God to make sure he can get through this. They create a universe that is so unique, even if you're not of that tradition or don't identify with that tradition or don't even care about it in your books, their universe is so compelling. And the operators and the action and the characters are so well developed. Dude, this sounds crazy. It's literally a series about literally spiritual warfare, yet I would give it a 5 out of 5 on buy-in.
Nice.
It sounds like fantasy, right? Battling the devil and training to be an operator and a spiritual fighter. But dude, they create a universe that you can easily just buy into of how like temptation works and how evil works and how different elements will creep into your team. Like imagine you're a SEAL team, right? So tight. Yet they just come up with the way to describe how the devil would work in that situation. And they just write a killer book, man. So
nice, cool. I have to check
yeah,
them out.
You got to listen to that interview, dude. It's awesome. Any examples? Any other examples you got here as we wrap up of what another book from a different series or any book you've read and how it would rate on the scorecard?
I guess thinking about Killing Floor, like that one would be the plot in that is. I don't know, it like gets dinged for being a little bit slow at times, but there's twists and turns. It's almost like I guess it's in this thriller regime, but it's almost more like a crime procedural book because he has to go down and investigate this murder, and then he finds out, spoiler, that or do you want me to tell you?
It sounds like a Michael Connelly book kind of.
Yeah, he goes down and finds out that the guy who is dead. It's just kind of crazy. So like, while it gets dinged for like some of like the pacing, I guess pacing. But you said pacing is in plot, right? But then some of the other plots it gets heightened. So it's like it's going to be an intriguing like battle with some of these things. And then action, like I feel like to get a high score with action, it can be either like some like 3 really good action scenes or 2 really good action scenes, or like just solid action throughout.
I was thinking The Terminalist.
Oh yeah.
That's going to be a 5 out of 5 on action and probably plot as well for me.
Oh yeah, I think so. Those are 2 5s.
I mean, yeah, the way in that first book Jack would write the action scenes to be nonstop, really intense, but also creative. It's unique. No one else writes those kinds of. It's gruesome as well. So I feel like that's an example that would get 5 out of 5 on action for me. We haven't talked about it, so maybe just a villains example. Could you come up with a 5 out of 5 villains example?
Who like Louis Gould would be a 5 out of 5, right?
True. So much from Mitch Rapp. Right, Louis Gould, exactly.
Hank Clark would be a 5.
Hank Clark.
I'm blanking on his name, but Aziz. Aziz would be a 5 out of 5.
Yeah, I would say most of Vince's villains are getting the 5 out of 5.
Power Station, 2.
You think that low? Yeah, maybe.
3, maybe a 3.
That's
maybe
like a 2.5.
2, 3.
Oh, did we decide on halves? You brought that up last time.
No, we didn't. So that's the thing. Like if we decide on halves, my score goes up
exactly
for Lions. So that's
yours might go up by a whole point or 1.5. You might have given 3 halves.
It would go by it would go up by 1.5. Yeah, so that's the thing, right?
All right, how about this? I think we're allowing halves, but we have to be judicious about them. We got to be cautious. I don't want you throwing 3 or 4 halves at me every scorecard here now. Now that I say that, my next book, I'm going to have halves on every category just because I'm saying that
No,
to you.
you will. You say it to me, and then you're the one that, like, every single thing is 2.5, 4.5, 5.5. Then you're trying to tell me, actually, can we do 0.25, like quarter marks? Like,
no, I'm cutting that off. I'm cutting it off because I know I would do it.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
That's why I just flat out no. I'm saying no to myself right now. All right, if you use a half, how about this? If you use a half, you got to have a good explanation. And
yes.
And if you don't,
halves are allowed, but
yes,
you have to explain it. It's not like they're not like blanketly allowed. You can't just. You need to stick to the 1 through 5. But if you feel compelled that this is not a 3, and it's also not a 4,
3.5.
Yeah, I think it has to be. They're exceptions. They're exceptions, not the rule.
However, I see you, but I'm gonna up the ante. If the explanation,
you only get one half a book.
I was gonna say maybe we do 1 half a book, but hey, maybe 2 are justified. So I don't want to put that limit on it. Maybe 2 are justified. You got to offer the explanation. But here's what I'll say: if the explanation isn't quite cutting it, can the other person have veto power?
I think I was going to say that you can
veto it. Exactly. I think we have to just to check each other so it doesn't get out of control.
Yeah, so mine would go up by a point, right? I would give the plot for just to give an example. Lions would get a 4.5, and then villains would get a 3.5.
Yeah, so that would add a point. So then our average goes up as well. Gotcha. Yeah. And to be honest, I probably would have thrown in a half with. What did I go low on? I went low on buy-in.
We both went low on buy-in, which I
probably would stand by that, but I would actually probably go up a half on villains because I loved Gerhard Miner.
You did like
I really
did. I wasn't as big on Miners as you were.
Yeah. Or a half on covers. I like the covers, but there are
covers. Better. The covers are really good. Yeah, see, I could add a half there too. The covers are very good.
All right, so that makes Lines of Lucerne a 25 pretty much between the two of us. Now that we've got the half rule.
Yeah, exactly. An average of a 25, pretty much, yeah.
All right, the 0.5 rule is hereby in effect moving forward, and the other person has veto power if the explanation of why you're pulling out the half point is not properly justified.
Call out each other's bullshit. I like it.
There it is. Dude.
All right, Mike, we got anything else to talk? Or should we get out of here?
I think that's it. So why don't you tell the people what's coming at them next, both on this podcast, Season 2, the Scott Harvath podcast, but also on No Limits, the Thriller podcast, brand new feed.
All right, so May 2nd, we're going to drop Path of Assassin Part 1 on this feed. Then on our new feed, go subscribe. No Limits, Thriller podcast. We mentioned we have a couple interviews coming, so on April 25th, we'll drop Andrews and Wilson. And then later on in the week, we'll drop our Ward Larson interview. So be sure to check out those books. So say the books again so they can go check them out and read them.
By Andrews and Wilson, Dark Intercept and Dark Angel. And by Ward Larson, Assassin's Edge is the new one, but we absolutely recommend Assassin's Dawn, which came out last year, which was the novella. So it's an origin story, if you will, for the main character, David Slayton. So Assassin's Edge and Assassin's Dawn. I'd recommend starting with Assassin's Dawn. That's a really good origin story in a novella format, and you'll immediately realize, oh, I'm down with David Slayton. So Assassin's Dawn by Ward Larson. Totally recommend it, and it's quick.
All right, so we have to thank our patrons. Our special operator, Sherry F., our special agents, Daryl, Kevin, George, Matt, Dawn, Dennis, Peggy, Catherine, Ray, Bridget, Jeff, and Mark. Please subscribe, rate, and review using your favorite podcasting platform. You can find us at ThrillerPod.com or on Twitter and Instagram at MitrapPod. And as always, keep the faith. And just a disclaimer, this podcast is not affiliated with Brad Thor, Scott Harvath, or Simon & Schuster. The music soundtrack is Honor Bound by Brian Teo.